The road no one walked after sunset had a name, though almost no one said it aloud anymore. Old Cedar Line. A quiet strip of cracked pavement curling through the far edge of Harwick, the kind of small American town where porches creaked in the evening breeze, and the last notes of daylight faded behind rows of century-old pines. And tonight, you and I drift together toward that forgotten place, gently, slowly, as if carried by the whisper of an unseen wind. This is Evelyn Blackwood, speaking to you from Midnight Murmurs Radio, with a bedtime story meant to lull you into the softest, coziest calm, even as we wander through shadows where history still lingers, quietly breathing just beneath the earth. Before we step onto the road, I want you to rest. Lay back wherever you are. Let your shoulders sink into the mattress or the warm couch beneath you, and invite your breath to move gently in and out, like distant waves smoothing the surface of a lake at night. Inhale slowly, letting cool air sweep tension from your body. Exhale even slower, letting heaviness melt away. Feel your jaw loosen, your eyelids soften, your hands unclench, drifting downward like fallen leaves, finding a quiet place to rest. You are safe here, wrapped in a quiet story meant only to guide you toward deep, peaceful sleep. Let the world outside fade, like a street lamp dimming behind a curtain of mist, and allow your imagination to step softly into the still, tender quiet of Harwick at dusk. The story begins on a warm October evening, long after the town's harvest festival had ended, when lanterns still hung from the old oak by the courthouse and the faint scent of caramel apples drifted through the air. Harwick always looked its softest in October, gentle, touched by a tender nostalgia, as though every house remembered the generations who had lived inside it. But there were corners of the town where nostalgia felt different, heavier, like a memory someone had tried to bury but never quite could. One such place was Old Cedar Line. People said the road changed after sunset, not in a dramatic way. Not in the kind of way ghost stories in big cities liked to brag about. Instead, it shifted the way a quiet room shifts when someone who lived there long ago still lingers, watching, listening. The road wasn't dangerous. It wasn't cursed. It was simply waiting. For what? No one agreed on, but everyone agreed on one thing. After the sun dipped below the pine ridge, the air on that road grew still and thick, almost tender, as if carrying an old sorrow that didn't want to be disturbed on this particular evening. That's exactly where our lone traveler Harper Quinn found herself. Harper wasn't a thrill seeker, nor the kind who chased ghost stories for the adrenaline. She was gentle, introspective, soft-spoken, a former archivist who had recently moved to Harwick, hoping for a quieter life. But quiet towns have a way of offering mysteries to the people who least expect them, especially the ones carrying secrets of their own. Harper's footsteps moved slowly along the edge of the twilight road. She hadn't meant to walk this way. She had taken a wrong turn leaving the main street. And yet, as Old Cedar Line revealed itself, bathed in the last pale blush of fading sunlight, she felt an irresistible pull come, soothing, almost welcoming. The trees on either side leaned inward, their branches hanging like curtains made of shadows. Fireflies drifted between the trunks, blinking in slow, dreamy patterns, as though guiding her forward. The first sound she noticed was soft to startle, but just enough to stir curiosity. It was the sound of something shifting beneath the leaves, not footsteps. More like a gentle brushing, as though someone in an old dress were moving slowly, just out of sight. Harper paused, listening. The air carried no fear, only an odd, delicate melancholy, like the echo of a memory that hadn't been spoken aloud in decades. A warm wind rustled the pines. The lanterns from the harvest festival flickered behind her, dimming as dusk settled fully across Herawick, and then, as the final strip of sunlight slipped away, Harper saw it, a faint glow far down the road, not bright enough to be a street lamp, but not white, like headlights. It was amber-soft, steady, warm like the glow of a candle held by someone who had been waiting a very long time. Harper's heartbeat slowed instead of quickening. Somehow, impossibly, the glow felt familiar, comforting, as though it recognized her, as though it had been part of her life long before she'd ever set foot in Herawick. She took one small step toward it, then another. The road seemed to exhale beneath her feet, like earth finally released from silence. In that moment, Harper felt something shift in the air, history stirring, memory waking, time stretching thin. And deep within that amber glow, something or someone waited. The amber glow at the end of Old Cedar Line did not brighten, nor did it fade. It simply held steady, like a patient lantern, suspended in time. Harper Quinn moved toward it with quiet steps, her breath soft and slow in the cooling October air. The stillness around her deepened, not heavy, but tender in a way that made each passing second feel like brushing fingertips against the edge of a forgotten memory. From Midnight Murmurs Radio, I am Evelyn Blackwood, guiding you through this sleep story with a calm presence beside you, as though we too are walking this quiet road under a deepening sky. Harper kept moving, her shoes pressing gently into the old pavement, where cracks fanned out like delicate veins. Tall pines leaned overhead, their silhouettes stretching long and slender, almost protective. The scent of warm earth and faded pine needles drifted around her, mixing with the faint sweetness of distant festival treats, still lingering in the breeze, the kind of warm, nostalgic aroma that made sleepy towns feel timeless. And yet, beneath it all, there was something else, a hint of coolness rising from the ground, like the breath of an old house on a chilly night. The glowing light flickered once, not in warning, but in acknowledgement, as if sensing her approach. It reminded Harper of an old oil lamp she used to see in her grandmother's attic, the one that always hummed softly when lit, as though it held a voice trapped behind glass. She had not thought of that attic in years, and the memory brushed across her mind so unexpectedly that she paused, letting it settle like dust catching the last shimmer of twilight. Something shifted in the woods beside her, a soft rustling, slow and measured, not threatening, more like someone adjusting their place in a wooden rocking chair, settling in to watch. Harper looked ahead, but saw only the outlines of trees, pressed together like a crowd leaning in to listen. The silence was almost musical, a quiet rhythm carried by the tiny tapping of branches brushing one another, whispering gently as the night settled deeper with each step. Harper felt the world narrowing into this one road, as though the rest of Harrowwick had dissolved behind her. She felt neither lost nor afraidly guided. Gently, the way one might be guided through a memory one had forgotten they cherished, the glow ahead remained steady, neither approaching nor retreating, like a destination suspended just beyond time's reach. As she walked, the temperature shifted ever so slightly. A cool ribbon of air slipped past her ankles, like water streaming around a stone. She slowed, sensing the faint echo of something beneath her feet. Not sound, exactly, more like a vibration, subtle and rhythmic, almost like footsteps from a different century walking just below the surface of the road. Old Cedar Line had once been a central path in Harrowwick during the late 1800s, a time when horse-drawn carts clattered down its lengths and lanterns swayed from porch beams. Harper had read bits about it in the local archives, notes scribbled by townsfolk who wrote about evening gatherings, quilting circles, and autumn parades that passed right through here before the road was abandoned. The history, she realized, was not gone. It was listening. She reached a point where the trees thinned just enough to reveal a clearing to her right. The clearing held no modern structures, just the faint outline of an old foundation, half claimed by roots and wild grass. Harper paused, feeling an unexpected warmth wash over her, like the gentle press of a hand resting reassuringly on her shoulder. Something had happened here, not something violent or tragic, but something bittersweet, soaked deeply into the soil like rainwater that never fully dried. Another memory drifted up, one she couldn't place, a soft voice humming, low and soothing, a lullaby with no words. Harper tilted her head, listening. The song felt familiar, impossibly familiar, as though she had heard it long before she was born. It mingled with the wind, weaving through branches, brushing against her ears with the gentlest touch. Then, as if sensing her recognition, the amber glow brightened, not sharply, but with a blossoming warmth, like a flame taking a deeper breath. Harper continued forward. The road under her feet grew smoother, as though it remembered her steps. Fireflies drifted from the trees again, circling her in quiet spirals, their soft lights blinking in a slow, calming rhythm that matched her heartbeat. The world around her grew hushed, the kind of hush that felt like being wrapped in a warm quilt on a cold night, knowing you were exactly where you were meant to be. Ahead, the glow shifted, elongating, stretching upward, as though forming the outline of a person holding a lantern. Harper's breath caught, not in fear, but in awe. The figure was faint, translucent, like moonlight shaped into human form. The lantern they held glowed softly, its amber light spilling across the road in long, peaceful ribbons. The figure did not move. It simply waited. Harper took another step. Then another. The air around her thickened with a tender quiet, the kind that could only come from a place where stories had been buried for too long. And as she approached the lantern's warm halo, she felt the past unfolding. As this part drifts to a close, allow your body to soften and your thoughts to fade like warm candlelight in a quiet room. The figure holding the lantern did not advance, nor did it retreat. It simply remained, suspended in a stillness so gentle that Harper felt the night itself, leaning closer to listen. The amber glow wrapped around the figure like a soft halo, illuminating only the faintest contours of a long coat and the suggestion of hair drifting in a breeze she could not feel. From Midnight Murmurs Radio, I remain here with you, Evelyn Blackwood, guiding you softly through this tranquil, sleep-bound story where the edges of the world blur into something quiet and otherworldly. Something meant to soothe even as it stirs a tender chill beneath the skin. Harper slowed her steps until she stood a few paces away. The lantern's light settled over her shoes, spilling across the road like warm honey, pooling softly around her ankles. The figure's face remained indistinct, as though carved from fog, but Harper felt no alarm. Instead, she sensed a strange, peaceful recognition, the same kind one feels when returning to a childhood home after many silent years, but still familiar in the bones. The air around them thickened with the faint scent of old cedar wood, like the inside of a long-forgotten chest tucked away in an attic. It sent a delicate shiver down Harper's spine, not of fear, but of memory. She found herself breathing in more deeply, as if inhaling stories left unread for generations. The figure lifted the lantern ever so slightly, as though offering its light to her, and with that small movement, the world around Harper seemed to sigh. The trees stilled, the fireflies dimmed, even the soft hum of the night paused, waiting. Harper whispered, though no sound left her lips. Her thoughts drifted toward the figure like quiet ripples over water. Who are you? Why me? But the figure only held a lantern, silent and patient. The flame inside flickered once, casting a shadow that stretched across the road like a path inviting her forward. Then, as the wind brushed past the pines, the lantern's glow spilled farther, illuminating something Harper had noticed before: a faint line where the pavement ended and an older, narrower road began. It was unpaved, lined with stones half swallowed by moss, as though it had once been well-traveled, long before Haravik was mapped, long before its history was written in tidy ink by the archivists she once worked alongside. The figure stepped backward onto the old path, their form wavering gently, like candlelight reflected in a window pane. They didn't beckon, yet Harper felt the tug, soft and steady, leading her toward that forgotten stretch of earth. She followed, her heartbeat slow and calm, each step sinking slightly into the cool soil. The shift in atmosphere was immediate. The air grew richer, tinged with the faint smell of smoke, not harsh, but reminiscent of autumn bonfires where children once warmed their hands beneath wool blankets. She heard something faint, drifting on the breeze. Laughter, distant and muted, as though carried from another time. It was layered with the soft murmur of voices, the shuffle of boots, the rustle of long skirts, echoes of a town that once thrived here, hidden under layers of years, and quiet, forgetting Harper paused, closing her eyes. The sounds faded. 10. Return it, rhythmic and slow, like waves brushing a shoreline. When she opened her eyes again, the figure with the lantern had moved farther ahead but remained clear enough to follow. Lights began appearing along the path, small amber glows, not from lanterns or lamps, but from the air itself, like fireflies frozen in place. They lined the edges of the road in delicate clusters, forming a soft corridor of lights. Harper walked between them, the air humming faintly as if touched by an old melody. She soon reached a wooden signpost, half-rutted, and leaning to one side, she brushed away the moss with gentle fingers. A name revealed itself in chipped paint, Merrow Creek Road. She'd never seen the name in any of Harrowick's archived maps. She whispered it silently, letting the syllables settle in her chest. Merrow Creek Road. A road swallowed by time. A road no living person had walked in decades, perhaps longer. The lantern figure waited just beyond the sign. The glow around them pulsed, once low, warm, inviting. Harper stepped forward, and the sounds in the air became clearer. A horse trotting, a wagon wheel creaking, a lullaby carried by a woman's voice, each sound layered softly over the next, forming a tapestry of a long-lost evening. But none of it frightened her. If anything, the gentle echoes wrapped around her like a blanket woven from memory and moonlight. The lantern figure reached the crest of a small hill. Harper followed, her breath slow, her body relaxed, her steps guided by instinct rather than logic. And when she reached the top, she saw it. A faint outline of a settlement, shimmering as though made of fog and warm light. A ghost of a town. Not cold, not haunting, that simply waiting to be remembered. Harper felt her heart settle into a calm, deep rhythm, as though syncing with the pulse of this forgotten place. The lantern's glow deepened into a soft golden hue. The past was opening. As the night around you softens, allow this moment to cradle you gently, like drifting into warm, still waters, where dreams begin. The ghost of the town shimmered softly at the foot of the hill, neither entirely present nor entirely gone, like an old photograph held up to candlelight. Shapes of rooftops, faint silhouettes of porches, the gentle hint of chimneys that once breathed warm smoke into autumn evenings, all of it hovered in a warm haze, as though memory itself had taken form. From Midnight Murmurs Radio, I am still here with you, Evelyn Blackwood, guiding you deeper into this quiet, calming journey, letting the shadows soften and the night lull you into a peaceful, drifting calm. Harper stood motionless at the crest of the hill, feeling the night wrap around her in a slow, tender embrace. The lantern figure had stopped just ahead, their glow merging with the ambient amber that illuminated the spectral traces of the town. Though the figure remained faceless, Harper felt a quiet presence emanating from them, a kind of steady reassurance that calmed her breath and loosened every muscle in her body. She stepped downhill, her feet sinking slightly into the cool earth. As she drew closer to the ghost town, the faint sounds she had heard earlier, laughter, murmuring voices, the clatter of wooden wheels, grew clearer. Yet the sounds did not intrude. They floated gently, as though wrapped in soft cotton. She sensed no danger, only the mellow echo of moments lived long ago. At the bottom of the hill, the apparition of a street revealed itself. A simple dirt path appeared beneath her feet, lined with ghostly impressions of buildings that glowed faintly at the edges. Harper could see what might have been the outline of a general store, a stable, and a long-settled inn with a front porch where rocking chairs swayed in the breeze. Their forms were incomplete, fading into mist where history had lost its memory. But enough remained for Harper to understand that this was once a place full of small, ordinary lives. A soft hum vibrated through the ground, like the sigh of a world exhaling. The lantern figure stood in the center of the spectral street, their light steady. Harper approached, and as she did, the ghost town responded. The mist brightened slightly, revealing more detail: the faint swing of a lantern over a doorway, the shape of a sign creaking in an invisible breeze. Harper reached out, fingers trembling in the quiet, and touched the air where the general store's doorframe should have been. Her hand passed through, yet she felt a cool tingle, a sensation like dipping her fingers into a stream on a cold morning. The lantern flickered, drawing her gaze. The figure turned slightly, enough that Harper felt they were looking directly at her. There was no malice in the presence, only an ancient weariness mixed with something softer: hope, perhaps, or longing. The faint sound of a bell drifted across the air, a gentle, rusted ring, like the bell that once hung above the door of the general store. Then came the murmur of footsteps, soft and shuffling. Harper turned it, expecting to see someone walking down the street, but the shapes that appeared were translucent, wavering like candle smoke. A man carrying a sack of flour, a woman in a long cotton dress, a young boy chasing something in the dust. They passed through her, unaware of her existence. These were not ghosts in the fearful sense, but echoes, memories so deeply imprinted in the land that they continued replaying long after the town itself vanished. Harper watched as the woman paused before what might have been a fabric shop, tilting her head as though listening to someone calling her name from inside. The echo dissolved before the answer came. A warmth spread through Harper's chest, though she couldn't place the reason. Everything here felt familiar in a way she didn't understand, as though she had lived fragments of this place in dreams she had long forgotten. The lantern figure lifted their light again, and something new revealed itself at the far end of the street. An old wooden bridge, its planks faded, but still holding shape in the soft glow. Beneath it, Harper saw no water, only a dark expanse, rippling with faint silver light like moonlit mist. The bridge called to her gently, as though promising answers waiting beyond. The figure began moving toward it, and Harper followed. The ghost town dimmed behind her, its shapes softening into a dreamlike blur. As Harper walked, the hum beneath her feet returned, stronger now, vibrating through her bones in a calming, rhythmic cadence. The lantern figure paused at the foot of the bridge. Harper approached slowly, breathing deeply, letting the tranquility of the scene settle into her body like warm, drifting fog. As she reached the figure's side, the lantern brightened once more, casting long amber ribbons across the wooden planks. Harper placed her foot onto the first plank. It held, a soft whisper gentle as a lullaby rose from the mist below. The bridge, and whatever lay beyond it, was ready to show her its memory. And Harper, calm and trusting, stepped forward into the glow. As the night around you softens, allow your thoughts to float like lantern light, drifting lazily across still water. The wooden planks of the bridge felt cool beneath Harper's feet, smooth in some places, splintered in others, as though shaped by a century of footsteps that no longer echoed in the world of the living. The lantern figure moved ahead at a slow, steady pace, their glow brushing over the bridge's worn beams, revealing faint notches carved long ago by hands she would never meet. The mist below shimmered softly, rolling like a quiet tide, breathing in and out with a rhythm that soothed Harper's senses. From Midnight Murmurs Radio, I continue to walk beside you, Evelyn Blackwood, guiding you through this serene and ghostlit sleep story, letting every detail settle over you like warm dusk. As Harper ventured deeper across the bridge, a gentle shift in the atmosphere rippled around her. The air grew warmer, filled with the scent of cedarwood, and something sweeter, perhaps wild honeysuckle or apple blossoms, carried from an orchard that had not existed for decades. It wrapped around her with such tenderness that her steps slowed, as though savoring each moment of this long-forgotten crossing. Halfway across, she heard it again, that soft lullaby, drifting from beneath the bridge. The melody rose and fell like a mother humming to a child, each note warm, rounded, and impossibly familiar. Harper paused, leaning slightly over the railing. The mist swirled in gentle spirals, revealing hints of movement, glimmers of silhouettes, faint and delicate as shadows dancing on a distant curtain. She listened, her heartbeat syncing with the lullaby's slow cadence. The tune calmed her breathing, softened her thoughts, and stirred a memory she could not fully grasp, a childhood moment, perhaps, or a dream she had once forgotten upon waking. The feeling tugged at her chest, gentle but persistent, as though urging her to remember something important hidden deep within the melody. The lantern figure continued forward until they reached the end of the bridge. They turned slightly, their glow brightening enough to beckon. Harper took a final breath of the sweet air above the mist, then stepped away from the railing and followed. The ground beyond the bridge was different, softer, almost silken. A path stretched out before her, illuminated by the lantern's warm halo. It wound through tall grass waving in a slow, rhythmic pattern, as though stirred by a wind from another world. Each blade shimmered faintly, brushed by amber light. Harper walked with slow, deliberate steps. The ghost town behind her faded into a gentle blur, as though melting back into the night. Ahead, the path widened into a small clearing ringed by massive cedar trees. Their branches stretched upward like cathedral arches, forming a canopy that filtered the lantern's light into intricate patterns across the ground. Harper felt a hush settle over her, a sacred quiet. Soft and deep at the center of the clearing stood a single object, a weathered bench carved from old cedar wood, its surface worn smooth by the weight of countless evenings. The lantern figure approached it, setting the lantern gently upon the ground beside it. For the first time, the figure seemed solid enough to have weight, as though this place lent them a stronger presence. Harper stopped a few feet away, unsure if she should speak, though she already sensed that words were unnecessary here. The air itself seemed capable of listening. Then something shifted. The cedars began to whisper, not with voices, but with the creaking of ancient branches swaying slowly above them. the faint rustle of leaves brushing against one another, the soft murmur of roots stirring deep in the soil. Harper closed her eyes instinctively, letting the sound wash over her. It felt like the earth telling a story, an old story, worn smooth by repetition, but still heavy with meaning. When she opened her eyes again, the lantern figure raised a hand, not in warning, but in invitation. The bench, half illumined by the lantern's glow, seemed to hold a memory, a residue of something once precious. Harper stepped closer. As she did, the air thickened with emotion, gentle but overwhelming, like stepping into a room that still held the warmth of someone long gone. She reached out and touched the bench. A rush of images swept through her, not clear, not sharp, but soft and warm, like memories viewed through layers of drifting smoke. She saw children playing in the grass, a woman humming that same lullaby, a man sitting at dusk, polishing the lantern now resting at her feet, laughter floating through the cedar boughs. Quiet evenings where someone waited and waited and waited, and then silence, a deep echoing silence filled with unanswered longing. Harper withdrew her hand, breath trembling softly, but not from fear. The sensation was something else. Recognition, connection, the echo of a story she had somehow stepped into as though it were always meant for her. The lantern figure inclined their head, the gesture soft and almost grateful. The past had more to show her, and the night, gentle and wrapped her in its arms as she prepared to walk deeper into the memory that waited beyond the clearing. Let this quiet moment soften your thoughts, like warm light resting on still water, guiding you toward calm and rest. The clearing grew quieter, as though even the night itself was holding its breath around Harper. The lantern's glow softened to a mellow gold, spreading over the cedar roots like a warm tide. The figure lingered beside the bench, their presence steady and patient, neither urging her forward nor holding her back. From Midnight Murmurs Radio, I remain here with you, Evelyn Blackwood, guiding you deeper into this gentle, luminous place where forgotten stories breathe softly beneath the surface of time. Harper let her fingertips rest on the bench a moment longer, feeling the faint warmth that lingered there, an echo of lives once lived, of evenings shared, of quiet promises whispered into the branches overhead. She stepped back slowly, her breath steady, as though her body had finally synced with the ancient rhythm of this hidden world. A soft rustling stirred behind her, not alarming, but tender, like a child turning in their sleep. Harper turned gently, the path she had walked across the bridge, through the tall grass. Past the ghost town began to glow faintly. Each step she had taken marked by warm spirals of light that curled upward like tiny embers rising from a hearth. The sight filled her chest with a soft ache, a sense of being part of something long and patient. The lantern figure lifted their hand again, pointing not back toward the path she had come from, but toward a narrow trail branching off from the far edge of the clearing. The trail was almost invisible, barely more than a thread of silver woven through the roots and leaves. But as Harper looked closer, the air above it shimmered, as though the past and present were brushing lightly against each other. She walked toward it with slow, measured steps. Each footfall was cushioned by a layer of moss that yielded beneath her, soft as velvet. The cedars leaned in closer, their branches arching overhead to form a natural tunnel. The deeper she moved, the quieter the world became. Even the wind softened into a mere whisper, like an exhale from the earth itself. Shapes began forming in the dimness of wooden fence, nearly swallowed by the forest. An old sign half buried beneath fallen leaves. A faint outline of a gate that no longer existed in the waking world. Harper brushed away the leaves with gentle fingers and revealed faded script carved into the wood. Crescent Hollow Cemetery. The name echoed through her mind with surprising softness. It wasn't frightening. It felt familiar, as though she had spoken it before in a dream that hovered on the edge of memory. The lantern figure appeared beside her once more, their presence like a warm silhouette against the cool shadows. They stepped forward, passing through the space where the gate once stood, and Harper followed. The cemetery before them was not grim or cold. It shimmered with a quiet, almost sacred glow. Headstones rose like gentle silhouettes, their shapes softened by time, their edges blurred by the lantern's warm aura. Fireflies drifted between them in slow, soothing arcs. Harper walked among the stones, noticing the names carved into them fade in and out, as though the earth were whispering them into existence for just a moment before pulling them back into memory. Here, too, she felt that familiar pull beckoning, delicate as a thread tugging at her heart. She stopped before a small headstone near an old maple tree. Unlike the others, this one was clearer, its inscription softly illuminated by the lantern's glow. Marigold Quinn, 187 418 87, carried always by the light. Harper's breath caught. Last name. The realization sank into her slowly, like warm water seeping into cold stone. She did not know anyone named Marigold in her family history. No records she had seen ever mentioned a child. And yet, as she stared at the small headstone, a gentle warmth surged through her chest, a soft, aching recognition that brought tears to her eyes without sadness, only tenderness. The lullaby rose again, drifting from somewhere near the maple tree, the same melody she had heard beneath the bridge, the same tune that had tugged at something deep inside her. The lantern figure stepped closer to the headstone, lowering the lantern until its glow bathed the name completely. The light shimmered, and for a moment a moment Harper saw the faint outline of a little girl's silhouette beside the stone, her form soft and flickering like a candle flame. The girl lifted her face toward Harper, not fully visible, but smiling. Harper whispered a trembling breath, her heart filling with warmth, sorrow, and peace woven into one emotion that soothed her from within. The lantern's glow pulsed gently, as though acknowledging the connection. Then, as softly as it had appeared, the child's silhouette dissolved back into the warm air. Harper stood in the hushed cemetery, letting the moment wash over her, every part of her settling into a deep calm. She understood now. Merrow Creek Road was not just a forgotten path. It was a place where unfinished memories waited for someone who could hear them. The night around her softened, wrapping her in a deep, tranquil stillness. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. And if this journey brings you comfort, remember to subscribe and support the channel so more gentle tales can find their way to you. The quiet town of Ashgrove always carried a fragile stillness after the sun went down. But on this particular night, the stillness felt older, deeper, as though the very earth beneath the town had taken a long, solemn breath. The road that wound along the edge of the woods, known for generations as the road no one walked after sunset, lay waiting under a wash of fading blue twilight. And though most homes had already shuttered their windows and dimmed their lights, I found myself drifting toward that empty stretch of pavement with a calm curiosity heavy in my chest, as if something unseen had gently tugged me forward. The air smelled faintly of pine needles, cool soil, and the distant smoke of wood stoves, preparing for a long, quiet night. Each step I took matched the slow rhythm of my own breathing, steady and unlike the heartbeat of a place that had learned to live alongside its secrets. Somewhere above me, a single crow croaked from its perch, not in warning, but in recognition, as though it knew the story already and was merely welcoming me back. The road shimmered softly in the deepening dark, lit only by remnants of sunset clinging stubbornly to the horizon. It was the kind of light that blurred details into watercolor shapes, encouraging the mind to wander and imagine. I could almost feel the presence of people who had walked this path long before me, wanderers, townsfolk who carried burdens they never voiced. Their footsteps echoed somewhere in memory, faint but persistent, like whispers rising from the soil. Evelyn Blackwood, weaving her Midnight Murmurs Radio calm into every syllable, guided the moment inward. She reminded me to breathe slower, deeper, to let my shoulders fall away from the weight of the day. Her voice blended with the hush of pine branches overhead, entwining in a lullaby meant to soften the edges of consciousness. I let my eyes relax, not fully closing, but drifting toward that warm, blurred state between waking and dreaming. The road stretched out before me, gentle and unhurried, as if waiting for my pace to match its ancient calm dot. As I walked, the first hints of something older began to rise around me. The soft rustle of leaves took on the cadence of footsteps, not my own, but parallel to mine, not threatening, simply accompanying. The faint glow of fireflies flickered near the ditch, yet their light felt guided, deliberate, as though they floated in patterns shaped by an unseen hand. A mild chill brushed across my forearms, not cold enough to startle, but enough to convince me I was no longer alone, at least not in any earthly sense. The town's history seeped into the air, carried by the night like a fragile thread. This road had once been the spine of Ashgrove, used by farmers returning home, by children chasing fireflies in the summer dusk, by families heading to the harvest festivals that filled the valley with candlelight and music. But tragedies had layered themselves over time-lost travelers, vanished horses, a series of disappearances that left no footprints, no clues, nothing but a quiet grief that the community swallowed and never spoke of again. Those who lived here learned to seal their doors earlier each year, learned to let the night claim whatever it wished. And so the road became empty, revered, avoided, a place where the past still walked long after the living stopped. Tonight, however, it seemed the past wished to be remembered. A faint shimmer drifted along the bend ahead, like moonlight bending into a figure. My steps slowed instinctively. The forest around me soft its breath. Even the chirping crickets hushed for a heartbeat. The glow hovered, pulsing gently, neither approaching nor retreating. I felt a sense of recognition ripple through my chest, not from memory, but from something deeper, like an echo reaching across lifetimes. The shape shifted subtly, a suggestion of shoulders, a tilt of the head, a presence watching with patient longing, not sorrowful, not angry, simply waiting, perhaps for me, perhaps for anyone who dared to walk the road again. Evelyn's voice wrapped the moment carefully, as though cupping a fragile flame. She guided my breathing into an even slower rhythm, reminding me that I was safe, wrapped in the embrace of the night and the gentle unseen watchers who meant no harm. My heart beat soft. My thoughts became lighter, drifting like fog over the road. The figure shimmered once more, then began to dissolve, its edges unraveling into threads of silver light. The forest exhaled. A warm breeze brushed my cheek, tender and almost grateful. Whatever presence had appeared was not trapped or tormented. It had simply needed to be acknowledged, even for a moment. I continued down the road, unhurried, the stillness around me deepening into something profoundly peaceful. Each sound, the distant owl, the rustling branches, the soft crunch of gravel beneath my feet, blended into a quiet lullaby. The darkness no longer felt empty. It felt inhabited by memory, by history, by a gentle magic that had waited far too long for someone to listen. And as I moved deeper into that soft, eerie calm, I felt the night begin to open its long-hidden story to me. One breath, one step, one shimmering echo at a time. The night deepened softly around me as I continued along the quiet stretch of road, the surface beneath my feet glowing faintly with the last silver traces of twilight. The figure I had witnessed soft, shimmering, already dissolving like mist touched by moonlight, left behind a subtle shift in the air. It was as though something long dormant had stirred, not fully awakened, but stretching slowly, testing the edges of its forgotten existence. The woods grew denser here, yet the darkness between the trees didn't feel empty. Instead, it held a hush like that of an old church after a midnight service, reverent and warm. Pine needles rustled under the gentlest hints of moving air, though the breeze was too soft to disturb my hair. The shadows seemed to lean closer, not menacing, but curious, as if the forest itself was surprised to find someone walk in this abandoned path again. Evelyn Blackwood's slow, velvety narration wove into the scene, reminding me to release tension from my jaw, to soften my shoulders, to let the breath fall in long, smooth waves that moved through my body like drifting clouds. Her cadence made each step feel lighter, made the night less like a place I was exploring and more like a dream unfolding around me with patient grace. To my left, a patch of fireflies brightened suddenly, flickering in spirals as though forming a gentle guidepost. Their glow painted the air in streaks of gold-green light, illuminating the faint outline of an old wooden fence that I hadn't noticed before. The boards were weathered, sagging, but still standing, wrapped in vines that curled like delicate fingers tracing the memory of long-lost boundaries. Behind the fence lay an abandoned orchard, barely visible in the dimness, but filled with the heavy scent of overripe apples that had fallen and returned to the earth long before my arrival. The orchard carried a silence thicker than the rest of the woods, a silence made of stories. I paused, resting my hand lightly on the fence. The wood felt warmer than expected, as though touched by sunlight long after dusk should have stolen all warmth away. Something shimmered between the trees' thin strands of light, weaving slowly in the air, drifting like remnants of old lantern flames. I leaned in slightly, breath soft and steady. Then I heard it, a faint melody. Not quite music, not quite voice, something between the two, rising from the orchard in trembling waves. It sounded like distant humming carried by the wind, or perhaps the echo of a lullaby sung many years ago. The melody rose, no higher than a whisper, slow and soothing, and it wrapped around the branches like a memory that refused to fade. Evelyn guided my breathing deeper. Slow, inhale. Long, exhale. Let the body soften. Let the mind drift. The melody seemed to shift with each breath I took, harmonizing with my pulse, aligning itself with the slow rhythm that the night encouraged. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over me. When I opened them again, the orchard had changed. The air above the fallen apples shimmered with pale blue light. A path formed barely, their footprints glowing momentarily before fading, leading from the fence toward the hut of the orchard. The footprints were small, delicate, almost childlike. They paused halfway, as if whoever had made them had turned to look back. My breath caught gently, not from fear, but from a strange, tender ache that settled deep in my chest. It felt like the pool of nostalgia for something I had never lived, yet somehow remembered. The footprints moved again, one by one, fading and reappearing as though someone long gone was reenacting a nightly ritual. I followed them with my gaze, not climbing the fence, only watching from where I stood. At the far end of the orchard, a silhouette formed, a soft, muted glow outlining the figure of a woman in a long dress, her posture delicate and composed. She was standing beneath an apple tree that had grown old and heavy with time. The branches bowed above her like a weary guardian. Her face was indistinct, blurred by the soft haze surrounding her, but her presence radiated a profound calmness. In her hands she cradled something small, something wrapped in cloth, something she held with deep, aching tenderness. The humming grew clearer, a lullaby, ancient, gentle, woven with love and loss in equal measure. The woman lifted her head slowly, as though sensing I was there. Her outline brightened slightly, a shimmer passing through her form like wind through tall grass. She didn't move closer. She didn't reach out. She simply held her small bundle tighter, and the lullaby carried itself through the orchard like the memory of a farewell that had never properly settled. The fireflies dimmed, the footprints faded, the orchard grew still once more. The woman vanished. Only the warm hush of the night remained, along with the echo of a lullaby that would linger in the back of my mind long after I left the fence behind. With a slow, steady tread, I resumed my quiet walk down the road. No one walked after sunset, feeling the night open itself just a little more, ready to reveal the next part of its long-forgotten tale. The orchard's lullaby faded behind me like a breath disappearing into the night air. leaving only the soft whisper of leaves settling back into their quiet equilibrium. As I continued down the lonely road, the hush around me deepened into something almost velvety, a darkness that didn't smother but cradled, guiding my steps with a patience older than the town itself. The sky above had shifted fully into night, now deep indigo, washed with faint strokes of silver where the stars began surfacing one by one, as if stirred awake by the stirring of memories along this long-forgotten path. The road curved gently, bending away from the orchard and slipping between two rolling fields. The grasses swayed in lazy arcs, undisturbed by any real breeze, moving as if rocked by the remnants of the lullaby still drifting through the valley. Fireflies floated here too, but their glow felt softer, more contemplative, as though they were listening to the whispers rising from the earth. Evelyn Blackwood's voice settled deeper into the atmosphere, low and slow, guiding each inhale and exhale with a calming rhythm that soothed the edges of thought. She encouraged me to loosen my shoulders, to let the night hold me the way the fields held the fireflies, lightly, effortlessly, without expectation. Under the glow of the newly risen stars, the tension in my chest eased, unraveling in warm, quiet threads. As I passed into the open stretch of fields, the scent of apples faded, replaced by the cool, earthy smell of dew forming across the tall grass. Somewhere in the distance, a barn owl gave a soft, lingering call that echoed across the hills. The sound drifted toward me like a long-held secret ready to be shared. There was no fear in it, only an invitation. Ahead, the road sloped downward into a shallow valley. A faint mist clung to the ground there, curling around the edges of the pavement like a low, wandering tide. The mist glowed faintly in the moonlight, swirling and shifting in delicate patterns that suggested movement. Not random movement, purposeful, rhythmic, almost ceremonial dot. As I drew closer, I realized the mist wasn't just fog. It was forming shapes. Not clear shapes, not solid, but impressions of slow arcs that resembled old footsteps, faint motions, reminiscent of lantern lights swinging back and forth. Figures walked within the mist, their outlines elongated, fluid, as if made of drifting clouds pulled into the shape of memory rather than flesh. Their movements were unhurried, almost serene. A procession, a quiet, ancient procession moving along the road that no one dared walk after dark. Their shapes flickered brighter when I inhaled, dimming when I exhaled, as though synced with my breathing, or perhaps guiding it. Evelyn whispered to relax further, to let the body melt into stillness, as the mind drifted deeper into the unfolding dream. My steps softened, merging with the cadence of the spectral procession. None of the figures turned toward me. None acknowledged me at all. They moved with the calm devotion of people who had walked this road for generations, bound to a ritual long lost to history. Faint glimmers of lanterns bobbed in their hands, though the lanterns were made of nothing but moonlit mist. The procession stretched far into the valley, disappearing into a bend in the road where the mist gathered thickest. I followed quietly, not among them, but alongside, like a traveler permitted to witness a ceremony whispered across centuries. At the center of the procession walked a figure who glowed slightly brighter than the rest. Tall, noble in bearing, carrying something in the crook of one arm. Not a lantern, something round, delicate, covered in a thin cloth. For a moment, I thought it might be a harvest offering. Apples, wheat, or some sacred token the townsfolk once carried to honor the changing seasons. But then the figure shifted its weight, and the bundle moved alive. A jolt shivered through me, gentle but unmistakable. The bundle was small, swaddled, shifting with the faint, instinctive motions of a sleeping child. The figure cradling it walked with profound tenderness, each step measured and protective. The mist seemed to clear slightly around them, revealing glimmers of old clothing, something from at least a century ago. Not worn, not tattered, preserved in the same soft, glowing condition as the figure itself. The child made no sound, not a cry, not a whimper, only the peaceful, quiet presence of deep slumber. A deeper realization settled over me, heavy but calm, like a blanket laid across the shoulders. This procession was not tragic, not mournful. It was ritual. A crossing, a pasaje, a journey repeated each night to honor a promise the living had forgotten but the spirits could not abandon. The procession reached the thickest part of the mist and began to dissolve slowly, the figures fading into the glowing fog until only the tall bearer remained. He lingered just long enough for the soft outline of the baby in his arms to shimmer once more. Then he, too, faded, leaving behind only the swirling mist and the quiet pulse of the night. The valley fell silent again. The road ahead felt different, now, though still steeped in secret. I breathed in deeply, letting the night wash through me, and stepped forward once more, ready to follow wherever this strange, gentle journey wished to lead me. The mist in the valley thinned behind me like a dissolving memory, its ghostly procession fading into the hush of night. As I continued along the road, the darkness shifted again, not menacing, but deeply aware, as if the land itself had opened old notebooks of forgotten stories and was quietly turning the pages for me. The stars overhead brightened, sprinkling the sky with delicate silver seeds, their cool glow settling over my shoulders with a softness that felt almost protective. The road angled upward now, climbing gently toward the northern rise. Each step carried me farther from the valley, but the calm that had settled into my bones stayed with me, loosening every muscle, smoothing every stray thought. Evelyn Blackwood's voice flowed with the night, guiding me into slower breaths, deeper exhales, reminding me that I was simply drifting through a tale that wanted to be remembered. Her tone wove into the darkness like a warm thread, guiding without haste, urging the mind to soften and the body to sink into a comfortable, quiet dot. As I climbed the slope, the landscape changed. The long grasses gave way to old stone foundations, ruins of small houses that had crumbled long ago. Moss soft their edges, and moonlight pooled inside their hollowed shapes, as if filling the rooms with a pale, ghostly water. The stones held a subtle warmth beneath their cool surface, carrying echoes of laughter, arguments, celebrations, and long-ago nights when families gathered around oil lamps to share stories and soup. Time had hollowed them out, yet their presence lingered gently, as if the people who once lived here had stepped out only moments ago. The wind rose slightly, coaxing thin melodies from the cracks in the stone. It sounded like distant hymns, the kind sung on porches after supper, when the crickets joined in like a phantom choir. The air vibrated faintly, like an old radio tuning into a station on the edge of memory. The hum of forgotten voices mingled with Evelyn's steady cadence, forming a strange harmony, haunting and deeply peaceful all at once. Then, as I stepped around the remains of an old chimney, a subtle glow flickered behind a collapsed wall. It was not the pale blue of spirits, nor the golden green of fireflies. It was warmer like candlelight caught in a glass jar. Data approached slowly. A lantern sat on the ground, its flame small but unwavering. The lantern itself looked old, the handle bent, the glass slightly cracked, yet the flame inside burned as steadily as if held by a careful hand. Around it, the ground was undisturbed. No footprints, no drag mark, no sign of a visitor. Just the lantern burning at the heart of the ruins. As I knelt beside it, the flame fluttered gently, like a greeting. The warmth reached my skin, soft and real, grounding me in the present, even as the night tugged me deeper into the past. I reached out, letting my fingers hover just above the crackled glass. There, chiudere. The lantern brightened slightly, and then, without warning, the world around me shifted. Not dramatically, not jarringly, just a soft tilt, as though a curtain had been lifted. The ruined foundations filled in, the moss retreated. Light swelled from unseen windows. I remained crouched beside the lantern, but now it rested on a sturdy wooden floor beneath a large oak table. The room around me vibrated with life muted but unmistakable. A pot simmered on a cast-iron stove. A rocking chair leaned gently on its runners. The scent of cedar and fresh bread filled the air with comforting familiarity. But the people who belonged to this moment were not fully here. Their shapes flickered like faint silhouettes caught in a dream. A woman brushed her hair near the window, but her reflection never appeared in the glass. A man sat at the table reading a worn newspaper. Though the pages remained perfectly still, a child scampered across the floor, leaving no sound, no footprint, only the impression of movement. All of them were echoes. Gently, lingering impressions from a life that had slipped beneath the soil yet refused to fade. The lantern brightened again, and the room gently shimmered, revealing a small box, resting on the table. Its lid was carved with delicate swirls, each groove worn smooth by decades of hands touching it with care. The box pulsed with a soft glow, as though holding within it something not entirely bound to this world. I reached toward it, drawn by a quiet pull in my chest. The moment my fingertips brushed the lid, the entire scene dissolved softly, gracefully falling away like dust caught in the breeze. The ruins returned, the cold stones, the silent wind. The lantern dimmed, its light flickering as if tired from offering the memory, and then it went out. Darkness settled gently where the flame had been, yet the warmth lingered in my palm, glowing like an ember. I stood slowly, heart steady, breath slow, Knowing the night hadn't finished its story, the road ahead stretched deeper into shadow, but the darkness felt welcoming, ready to unfold the next hidden truth. The town had kept tucked beneath its quiet exterior. I stepped forward, the ember warmth still resting against my skin, guiding me deeper into the mysteries of the road no one walked after sunset. The ember warmth on my palm stayed with me as I walked, glowing softly beneath the surface of my skin like a tiny heartbeat borrowed from another time. The road stretched ahead in a slow curve, rising just enough to reveal the silhouette of the woods in the distant stall. Quiet, waiting. The night around me felt deeper than before, not darker, but richer, like velvet folded over itself again and again. Every breath I took blended into the hush, growing slower, softer, more synchronized with the pulse of the land. Evelyn Blackwood's voice flowed gently around the edges of my awareness, guiding each inhale, smoothing each exhale. Her slow, meditative cadence reminded me to sink deeper into the moment, letting my footsteps grow lighter as the night embraced them. The road beneath me seemed almost warm, absorbing the rhythm of my steps and giving back a whisper of reassurance. I was not wandering blindly. I was being guided. As the curve straightened, the woods on either side drew closer until the trees formed a narrow corridor. Their branches arched overhead, weaving a canopy that filtered the starlight into soft fragments drifting down like silver snow. The air grew cooler, fragrant with pine resin and damp earth. The forest floor rustled with the faint movement of small creatures settling into sleep. Everything about the place felt hushed, sacred, like an old cathedral built from bark and shadow. And then I noticed it's the faintest hum in the air, low and steady, vibrating like a distant engine that no longer existed. It wasn't a sound exactly, more a feeling, a gentle pressure in the chest, as though something unseen was trying to be remembered. The ember in my palm warmed slightly in response. The moment it did, the trees shifted, not physically. Not in a way the eyes could track, but the shadows deepened between the trunks, parting slowly, revealing a thin footpath leading off the main road. The path was narrow enough that most would miss it during the day, but at night, under the watchful glow of the stars, it seemed undeniable, an invitation etched into the forest floor. My breath steadied, my steps softened. I followed. The path wound deeper into the woods, leaves muffling every sound, making the world feel distant and muted. Fireflies drifted above the undergrowth in a languid, unhurried dance, their light moving in slow pulses like breathing. The deeper I walked, the stronger the hum became, not loud, just present, a thread of energy stitched into the air. And then the trees parted, revealing a small clearing bathed in moonlight. At its center stood an ancient stone well. The stones were weather-worn, rounded by time, covered in pale moss that glimmered under the moon like frost. The wooden cover lay broken beside it, as if pushed aside by hands no longer living. A rope hung from a rusted pulley, frayed and fragile, swaying though no wind touched it. The clearing held a silence so complete it felt like I had stepped outside of time entirely. The hum pulsed again, stronger this time. The well responded. A faint glow rose from its depths, not bright enough to illuminate the clearing, but enough to cast shimmering ripples across the mossy stones. I moved closer, breath slow, heartbeat steady, guided by Evelyn's soft, distant encouragement to stay calm, to let the night unfold without resistance. When I reached the edge and looked down, the glow deepened. Then I saw it, not water, not stone, a memory, projected upward like light through fog. I saw the orchard again, but this time it was a live trees, heavy with fruit, lanterns hanging from branches, families gathered in circles of warmth and laughter. Children ran barefoot between rows of apple trees, their laughter echoing like wind chimes. The woman with the swaddled bundle stood near the center, her glow gentle, her lullaby weaving through the autumn air. But then the scene shifted abruptly. The lanterns flickered, the air thickened, shadows stretched unnaturally across the orchard floor, and the woman's bundle grew still. The hum peaked sharply, vibrating through my chest. The glow from the well dimmed suddenly, as though the memory itself recoiled. The orchard darkened, the laughter fading into silence. The lanterns went out one by one. The woman's figure blurred, flickered, and dissolved. That the child she held vanished with her. Only darkness remained. The clearing returned. Moonlight washed over the stones again. The well fell silent, the glow sinking below the surface until nothing remained but a faint, lingering warmth. I stepped back, breath soft, heart steady, letting the hum fade into the night. Whatever tragedy had unfolded in that orchard had not been born of malice. It felt older, woven into the land itself on accident of fate, a moment that fractured a family and left echoes walking the road forever after sunset. But the story was not finished. The ember in my palm pulsed once more, gentle, urging. The woods parted behind me, revealing the road again. I stepped out of the clearing, the night drawing me forward, guiding me toward the final chapter. Waiting just ahead, where the truth of this long-forgotten sorrow was finally ready to be revealed. The road stretched ahead in a pale ribbon of moonlit mist, narrowing as it slipped between two gentle hills, their slopes softened by layers of drifting fog. Evelyn walked slowly, the phantom apple still cupped lightly in her hands. It shimmered faintly, like frost woven from memory rather than cold. The orchard behind her was silent now, resting the way an old tale rests once it has finally been told. Every step she took seemed to echo more softly than the last, as though Boone Orchard Road was cushioning her movements out of gratitude. The once ominous feeling that had hovered at the edge of her senses since the first evening she walked this road had shifted. It no longer felt like a warning. It felt like an acknowledgement. She paused, breathing in the cool night air, letting her breath slow to the rhythm she used on her Midnight Murmurs broadcasts. In, soft and steady. Out, long and loosening. Each breath melted a little more tension from her shoulders. The mist curled around her ankles gently, almost in a protective way, like an affectionate cat brushing past its owner. Ahead, the hills parted just enough to reveal something she hadn't noticed before, a weathered milestone marker, half buried in creeping moss. It leaned slightly, its carved numbers softened by decades of rain and frost. Evelyn approached. The engraving, though faint, was still legible under the moon's silver glow. Mile 3, the lantern walk ends. Here she traced the words with her fingertips, letting the cold stone seep into her skin. The Lantern Walk. She remembered reading something about it in an old historical column tucked into the Boone County Museum's basement archives. A harvest night tradition where families walked the Orchard Road in a procession of lanterns to honor lost loved ones. A gentle ritual, peaceful, communal. A time when remembering was done openly, lovingly, not hidden in the shadows. But something had happened that ended the tradition abruptly. A night that went wrong. A disagreement grown too bitter. A soul who never left. The orchard worker, she thought. He had been waiting for the lantern walk that never came again. A breeze drifted across the marker, carrying with it a faint rustle, lanterns swaying, children laughing, boots crunching on gravel. For a moment, Evelyn felt as if she were standing at the edge of that forgotten procession, as though history were brushing past her in a soft, mournful stream. Very slowly, she lifted the ghostly apple in her hands, holding it at chest height. The light within it pulsed faintly once, twice like a heartbeat. The breeze stilled. The mist around her drew in close, as though holding its breath. Then, from somewhere deeper down the road, Evelyn heard it. A low, resonant hum, not mechanical, not earthly. It vibrated gently, almost like a choir of distant voices blending into a single, tender note. The road beneath her warmed slightly, as if responding to a call centuries old. She whispered, "It's time to go home, isn't it?" The hum deepened in response, not threatening, but grateful. Evelyn set the apple on the moss-covered stone. As soon as it touched the surface, the faint light within it brightened, blooming outward like a tiny sunrise. The glow spilled across the stone, then down the milestone's sides, illuminating every carved letter in silver gold radiance. The mist began to move not, drifting randomly, but swirling in gentle spirals. Shapes formed within it, dozens of them, soft silhouettes, men, women, children, lanterns. In hand, their lights steady and warm, a spectral reenactment of the lantern walk. They walked past her without fear, without urgency, moving in harmonious silence, their lights weaving gentle arcs in the cool night air. Evelyn stepped back respectfully. A small hand brushed her sleeve, the faintest touch, no weight to it, only warmth. A child's voice, airy as dust caught in sunlight, whispered something she couldn't decipher but understood in feeling. "Thank you." At the end of the procession came the orchard worker. He paused in front of her, his form more solid now, the edges less blurred. He tipped his head in a quiet gesture of acknowledgement, gratitude, release. The apple's glow dimmed steadily, as though its purpose had been fulfilled. Then, one by one, the lanterns flickered out, like candles extinguished at the end of a long vigil. The figures faded softly, the mist settled again, and the road returned to stillness. Evelyn stood alone but not lonely. The night air felt lighter, relieved. Boone Orchard Road was no longer holding a story too heavy to bear. It had finally let go. She breathed deeply, letting that peace sink into her. Soft, warm, calming. As she began walking back toward town, she spoke aloud, not to Unknown, but to the night itself, in the same soothing voice she used on air. As the story fades, she whispered, "Allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep." The crickets resumed their gentle chorus. The moon slipped between clouds, and the road behind her glowed faintly, as if blessing her journey home. Before leaving the last bend of the abandoned road, she paused once more and added softly, "If you enjoyed this quiet walk through the unknown, remember to subscribe and support the channel. It helps keep these midnight murmurs alive." Then she stepped forward, back toward the lantern-lit town, unseen beyond the mist, leaving Boone Orchard Road finally